Last October, Danielle Outlaw made history, becoming the first African-American woman to lead the Portland Police Bureau. Mayor Ted Wheeler said he needed a partner and a leader in the Portland Police Chief, and the Bureau needed stability after years of scandal and turnover. She addressed racial tensions and barriers head-on at her swearing-in, and made promises to build trust between police and the community.
Seeking to understand our history is not divisive. It serves as a starting point for transformation and positive progression.
After 5 months on the job, Chief Danielle Outlaw joins us to talk about what she's accomplished, her goals for the Bureau, and the issues Portland Police will tackle in the future. For KGW News, this is Straight Talk.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this edition of Straight Talk. I'm Cathy Marshall, in this week for Laural Porter. It has been a turbulent few years for the Portland Police Bureau. A shortage in staff has been a challenge. The Bureau's handling of large protests in recent years was widely criticized, and there have been questions about officer-involved shootings. Add all that to frequent turnover at the top. Since former Chief Mike Reese retired back in 2015, the Bureau has been led by several different chiefs. Larry O'Day retired in 2016 while under criminal and internal investigations into an off-duty shooting of a friend. Acting Chief Donna Henderson led the Bureau for a few months, then retired when Mike Marshman was promoted to interim chief. Marshman held the position for just over a year. Chris Uehara acted as interim chief after Marshman retired. Last summer, Mayor Ted Wheeler announced he would appoint Danielle Outlaw to the top spot, hoping to bring stability in this revolving door of leadership. We want to welcome tonight our guest, Portland Police Chief Danielle Outlaw. Boy, you look at all the change that the Bureau has had. You've now been in the job 5 months. What's your synopsis of how it's going so far?
So far, so good. No complaints. It's been a lot of time just getting acclimated, getting to know the city, getting to know the community, learning the culture within the community, and thus learning the culture within the Bureau itself and getting to know the people.
You look at your background, Chief, and 19 years spent in the Oakland Police Department, really all of your law enforcement career. What about your time in Oakland prepared you for what you faced in Portland?
A lot of challenges that we faced in Oakland were pretty similar to the issues addressed and needed to be addressed here. Whether we talk about livability issues, we also had issues dealing with crowd management and crowd control, mass demonstration scenarios. Staffing remains an issue, not just in Oakland and in Portland, but it's, you know, the issues experienced across law enforcement agencies across the country. Again, a lot of, I'd say, similarities. And it drew me here because I had experience dealing with a lot of the issues in Oakland, and I knew that I'd be able to add value here in Portland as well.
You mentioned the shortage. It's something that you have become passionate about bringing attention to. The Bureau now has over 900 officers, from what I understand. How many would you like to have, and why is it such a challenge attracting officers here to Portland?
Yeah, in this upcoming budget cycle, we're asking for a little over 90 more. There's so many different models out there that agencies use to determine what that magic number is. The reality is that no one really knows what the magic number is. We know, though, that the population is growing in leaps and bounds here in Portland, and we're working with a significantly less authorized strength that we had than the one we had many years ago when the population was a lot smaller. That's significant because our call volumes increase, and the nature of the types of calls that we're now responding to are a little bit more complex than what we had to respond to several years ago. So not only do we have more calls for service, but it's taking us more time to utilize our resources while we're on a call. So that means when you or I or someone dials 911, it might take us a little bit longer to get there. With more officers, that gives us the flexibility to not only decrease response times, but to make sure that officers have discretionary time to be out and about and visible and have the opportunity to meet their merchants and say hello to the people in their districts.
One of the changes that you have had approved, you mentioned asking for 90 additional officers, but you have added a position of deputy chief and had that approved. Why did you feel that was necessary? I know that that was the position you held in Oakland prior to taking this job, and the Portland Bureau did not have that. They had a system of assistant chiefs.
Yes.
Why make this change?
So I'm not the first chief to actually create this position. It's a number 2 position. And I would use the analogy of a CEO, COO model. We manage a lot of money. It's a business. The Bureau is a business. And in order to be efficient and really to allow the chief of police to focus at the strategic level, you need somebody on ground. When I'm here doing things like this, or I'm out in the community, someone needs to be on ground making sure that day-to-day operations are running effectively. And when I say day-to-day operations, I mean everything that has to do with crime operationally. So this position would oversee our operations branch and the investigations branch, and will be responsible for overall crime strategy in the city. That still leaves a lot left of the Bureau to be led by me.
The salary for that position in the $180,000 range, and so where does that money come from in terms of other programs you have in the Bureau?
Yeah, I had to make it very clear that this position would not be created at the loss or risk of any officers, number 1. And we were able to identify funds from vacancies that were already in the Police Bureau, non-sworn vacancies. And moving forward, we'll have to continue to identify the ongoing funds to make sure that it's funded.
You talk about the nature of the calls and how intense they can be, and I assume that a good amount of those calls are related to the homelessness, really crisis that we have in
Yes.
Portland right now. 1,800 people on the streets at night. Half of those are considered mentally ill. 3/4 of them have drug or addiction problems, alcohol problems. What do you face in terms of a challenge in having your officers prepared to deal with? Because, you know, honestly, there's a lot of criticism that more hasn't been done.
And it's a much larger issue than PPB. But thank you for asking that question. With that said, going back to my response earlier about the complexity of the nature of the calls that we're dealing with, I tell people all the time that if you would have talked to me maybe 5 years ago, or if you hear me addressing new recruits or new officers that we've hired, and as I'm welcoming them to the Police Bureau, you'll hear me say, get out there, enforcement, make arrests, crime, 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 law and order. But the nature of what we deal with has changed drastically over time. And what we're talking about today are those livability issues that you're talking about. So when I say an officer takes a little bit longer, it's because we realize that everything doesn't require a response of going to jail. So our time is spent identifying resources, working with partners at the county level and other city partners to make sure that we're sending this person to the resource or directing them to the resource that they need. That takes a little bit longer than, you know, just responding to a call for service and taking a report. Everything does not have to have a criminal justice aspect to it.
In the past month, though, questions came up as to when you do clear out homeless, encampments, groups of people in tents. There was a situation, the Village of Hope in a Northeast Portland park that sprang up. It didn't have any, city approval, and so officers did move in and sweep out that area. Why do they sweep out an area like that and then not others? How do you make the distinction?
Well, that's a good question, and a lot of these, depending on the property itself, this was a decision that was made by folks in charge of the parks. It was park property. We came in on the back end. We made it very clear that our role was to be out of the public eye until we absolutely had to be. We allowed proper notifications and warnings to take place. People were warned that if you do not relocate within X amount of time, you'll have to be moved out. And we came in at the absolute last minute in order to do that. Again, the decision really is based upon those who are the owners of those properties, and the timelines are also determined by the owners of the property as well.
Do you feel pressure from within the business community when you hear reports of places like Columbia, a mainstay here in the Northwest, and Tim Boyle criticizing the downtown area in terms of being welcoming to customers and mentioning a possible move out of the downtown area. For somebody in your position, you must hear that and say, we need to do more.
Yeah, it could be unsettling. I don't know if pressure is the right word, but it's really important for us to manage expectations. And right after that editorial came out, we all sat at the table and had a very open and honest dialogue about the tools that are available to us at the Portland Police Bureau, and then some of the roles and responsibilities of others within the city and at the county. And I think that's where the discussion has to start, because again, we have certain tools available to us legally, but we're only one part of it. There are other partners here that have to step up as well and make sure that we address the root cause, because we can arrest our way out of this all day, but it still doesn't abate the problem.
Another concern for downtown business owners, and really anybody in the city who wants to go downtown and enjoy an evening, is the protests, the handling of protests. Post-election, the city really got into a riot atmosphere. There seemed to be a tendency to let things play out. Then we had a change of leadership from Mayor Hales to Mayor Wheeler, and subsequent protests seemed to be shut down in a different fashion, a sort of containment type thinking. How do you approach this, and what have your conversations been with Mayor Wheeler about this subject?
I will say this, the mayor has been, since I've been here, I started on October 2nd, the mayor has been very supportive in that he allows me to run the Bureau autonomously. He does not direct me and give me tactical direction on how to run a mass crowd control demonstration. I'll put that out there.
Is there a discussion, though, when these things are anticipated?
Absolutely, because he is the police commissioner, you know, and he is my boss. But he recognizes that he's not the subject matter expert in these types of situations. He relies on us. We advise him of what our plans are and what we're going to do. And philosophically, we also share dialogue as far as what we want our outcomes to be and how we intend to do that. But since I've started here, I'm pleased to say that there's been very little interference in that sense from the mayor.
What is your tolerance in regard to a protest? Is it disruption of mass transit, taking over public spaces? I mean, where do you draw that line?
It really depends. We do our very best to set the tone prior. So we do our best to reach out to the demonstration organizers. Thank you. We reach out to the organizers. We try to maintain contact and communication throughout the event. If we see that something might be on its way of going sideways, we have resources in place to make sure that we're visible when we need to, and we try to address individuals that are creating the disruption as opposed to penalizing the entire group, because we know that anarchists or individual disruptors like to blend in amongst those who are there legally and peacefully protesting. So philosophically, it really is, we do our best to stay out of the way as long as we need to, and we step in only when we have to.
When it comes to dealing with a protest situation or perhaps an officer-involved shooting, we have seen in other parts of the country where officers are equipped with body cameras. Is this something that you would advocate for your officers to have?
We're actually doing some research now. We're visiting some other major cities and that are comparable in size that have already started with the program. We have the benefit that there are other agencies out there that had these. They've gone through the bumps and bruises of policy development, contract negotiations, sitting with their labor unions and really coming to a happy medium as far as when to activate, when not to activate, when officers should be allowed to view their footage, when they shouldn't be allowed to view their footage. All of these things, we find that in our business sometimes the technology will precede the policy. And I want to make sure that we don't rush into something without really doing a comprehensive study and research of how effective this will work for us and tailor it to the city of Portland. I am an advocate, but I want to make it clear that these cameras are a tool.
Do you have a timeline at all for when you might expect that body cameras would be used by officers in Portland?
Not yet, but I do anticipate if we do get them on ground, we'll more than likely roll them out as a pilot test first before it, because it's costly. We all know that. And I'm cognizant of the fact that any time that we take on a new project in the city, or we take on a new project within the Bureau, it comes from the same pot that the other bureaus have to share.
All right. You know, a question just before we head into the break, and that would be, in your 5 months on the job, what has come, I guess, as the biggest surprise, something you didn't anticipate in coming to Portland?
There's no sun.
Well, you must have heard about that, Chief.
Well, no, I heard about the rain, but you know, just because there's rain doesn't mean there's no sun. For the most part, I would like to say that I did my research, and I came in this knowing that I don't know what I don't know. I have a pretty supportive group of people around me, not just at work, but in my social circles. So I can pick up the phone or text or email and say, hey, can you tell me about this? And folks have been great with filling me in and just making sure that I have the support that I need and that I know what I need to know.
All right. Well, we look forward to hearing more from you. We're going to take a quick break, but I urge you to stick around because in just a little bit, we're going to hear about the Chief's time on Wheel of Fortune. Yes, it did happen a few years back.